Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, I am recording this prior to the game, so I'm sorry I'm not going to be providing any fantastical analysis of what happened in those games. I'm hoping for a good outcome. Like I said, it is what it is. Vikings and Lions are out, so I will tolerate whatever outcome may come. My least favorite would be the Eagles, but again, it is what it is. So today we're going to continue on news and notes, NFL draft, and then year in review, starting with the defensive players. We'll see how far we get with that. Really, the only thing that's going on right now, obviously we've got the NFL games going on. There is some quite a bit of college football news going on with all the bowls. Senior Bowl registration happened today for me, and then day 2 of the East-West Shrine practices was today for me. We'll get to that momentarily, but otherwise it's mostly just coach GM stuff. So Titans hired Dave Ziegler as their new general manager. Mike Zimmer is out as defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, likely to retire. Also in hilarious turn of events, Chip Kelly is all the rage right now as a potential offensive coordinator for the Jaguars and the Texans. He might be fine. I don't know, but it's just funny. The whole Chip Kelly thing was such a horrible experiment. It'd just be funny to have him back in. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports Aaron Rodgers is open to returning to the Jets next season. So there's that. I don't know that actually means much. I haven't heard much in terms of, obviously it feels impossible that they would bring him back, but there's a new coach, there's a new GM, and they'd have to kind of determine what direction that they want to go, although it's probably going to be mostly the owner's decision. I would assume they're going to move in a direction without Aaron Rodgers, but we shall see. Maybe they feel like they can dig their heels in and run things a little better and actually take a run with Aaron Rodgers while he's here. Who knows? Lions said they're open to exploring an extension for Kirby Joseph. I think that's fantastic. I think they should. I think they should pay him everything because, as I said, Kirby Joseph, not only is he one of the more hated players in the NFL, massively overrated. He's, maybe he's blossomed into this fantastic safety, but this is year 3 for him in the NFL. Year 1 and 2, he was not a good safety. Year 3, he had a bunch of picks. That's not going to repeat. And so ideally, they pay him a ton of money and he regresses back to being, at best, a mediocre safety. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator of Washington, interestingly enough, apparently is not telling anybody what his plans are because he's too focused on the fact that they're in the playoffs right now. Maybe the coaches for Detroit could have taken some note of that. Rather than gallivanting around doing interviews, they could say, actually, I'm kind of busy. I'm in the frickin' playoffs right now. But, that's fine. Lions promoted Sean Dion Hamilton to linebackers coach. So, like I said, they love their former players over there in Detroit and now Chicago. That seems to be their MO. So they're going to continue with that. And I think that's about all there is for NFL news. As for NFL draft, just a couple notes here. First of all, one of the guys that's been standing out and has been kind of all the rage is cornerback Kobe Bryant. A couple of different notes I saw on him. This is Jordan Reed. Kansas cornerback Kobe Bryant has been the best player at the Shrine Bowl through 2 days. Had an interception and multiple pass breakups today. Also was chirping to the receivers in lots of drills throughout practice. Very confident player. Bill Stark says Kobe Bryant has had that dog in him for some time. Size profile be damned. I'd find a way to take him somewhere on day 2 and watch him chirping and cover receivers in the NFL. And this is my favorite tweet from Trevor Sycamore says, this is a Kobe Bryant rep if I've ever seen one. Press alignment, early contact, little grab, punches the ball out at the catch point, stares down the receiver on the ground. The full experience. Matt Miller says, Kobe Bryant, trash talk team All-American. Brett Coleman says, I'll have more takeaways later today from Shrine Day 2, but Kansas DB Kobe Bryant once again had a phenomenal day, been a pass breakup machine. So we'll see how this goes. As of right now, Kobe Bryant is, where's my guy at? 148 overall. That's currently where he's ranked on the consensus big board. He's got to be, cornerback 20 so far? We'll see if he skyrockets up at all after this East-West Shrine performance. We'll do a shortened version of it, but our Beast scouting report. Kobe Bryant, University of Kansas, 6', 175, from Evergreen, Alabama, went to Hillcrest High School, played corner and wide receiver. As a senior, he had 38 tackles, 8 interceptions, 5 returned for a touchdown, earning him recognition as a playmaker. 3-star recruit, initially committed to Kansas, where he quickly made an impact as a true freshman. Had 22 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown in 11 games. As a sophomore, 38 tackles, 3 picks, 1 touchdown, a forced fumble in 12 games, earned first-team All-Big 12 honors. 2023 as a junior, 32 tackles, 4 picks, 1 sack, 5 pass breakups in 13 games, repeated first-team All-Big 12. 2024 as a senior, 37 tackles, 4 interceptions, 11 pass breakups, a forced fumble in 12 games, unanimous first-team All-Big 12, AFCA coaches second-team All-American. Got him down as an unofficial 4.45 40. Often compared to Tariq Castro Fields for his length, athleticism, and ball-hawking skills. Exceptional instincts and knack for creating turnovers with 13 career interceptions and 22 pass breakups. Look, he's a little undersized for what the Packers tend to like, but, Hafley, what's one of the things he harps on is taking the ball away, right? So I wouldn't 100% rule him out here. Capable of outside corner as well as slot. Known for making game-changing plays in critical moments, including multiple overtime interceptions. Weakness, obviously, his size at 175. He's aggressive, but tackling can be inconsistent. Lacks elite speed, which could be exploited by faster receivers. Currently projected to be a mid-round pick, 3rd or 4th round. Kind of a Tariq Castro Fields / Desmond King kind of a corner. In fact, there was another guy I just looked at that's really popular right now that got compared to Desmond King, which is a guy that I remember because I was a big Desmond King fan. So, all right, there you go. There is Benjamin. Oh, no, not Benjamin Morrison. That's somebody else. There is Kobe Bryant. A couple other little notes that I picked up here. Maryland defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, once again, having a very good day. Lots of pop in his hands. Quick off the ball. Easily stands out with power and movement ability. Ryan Fowler says, teach tape from Rutgers defensive back Robert Longerbeam versus Ricky White. Longerbeam has done a nice job through 2 sessions. We can't draft a dude named Longerbeam. Georgia center Jared Wilson, my top center in the class, will miss the Senior Bowl per sources. He's dealing with the effects of a long season and will prep for the Combine. Early on, Cal linebacker Teddy Buchanan has been a standout, plays downhill very well, very fluid in coverage. His speed as a former track star shows. Lots of tools and production that teams will covet. UNC football cornerback Elijah Huzzie has been one of the standout DBs over the last 2 Shrine Bowl practices, in my opinion, says Trevor Sikkema. Nice rep here, 1v1 versus speedster wide receiver Wester. Didn't panic in trail and recovered for the pass breakup. As if the defensive line class isn't good enough, Maryland defensive lineman Jordan Phillips has had a big day too. Plays with great leverage and heavy hands and has been showing out. Sikkema says, Vol football wide receiver Dante Thornton, doing what he does best at the Shrine Bowl, he wins vertically. From the release to the hand swipes and the contact window, he knows how to win with more than just speed. There's another guy that I've been hearing a lot about as well. Trevor Sikkema says, it can be tough to stand out as a running back with no full tackling during all-star practices, but this is exactly what you want to see from Gamecock football running back Rocket Sanders. 6', 224. We know he can run behind the pads, but here he showed nice wiggle to cut back inside and up the field. I've heard a couple people talk about Rocket Sanders. We don't need a running back, but 6', 224 is definitely the Packers style, so be interested to start digging into some of these running backs and get a look at that guy. And then just sniping some stuff here from Mr. Easton Butler. You can check him out on social media, by the way. He's got a little Google Docs thing, but guys that the Packers have met so far at the Shrine Bowl: defensive back Elijah Clark, offensive lineman Jack Conley, offensive lineman Tim McKay, edge rusher Tyler Barron, defensive tackle Kenneth Grant, linebacker Kane Medrano, defensive tackle Nazir Stackhouse, cornerback Corey Thornton, cornerback Kobe Bryant, defensive tackle Peyton Page. There's a bunch of other ones from the Tropical Bowl, Hulu Bowl, College Gridiron Showcase, and FCS Bowl, but we're not going to go through all those again. You can check it out for yourself. Lastly, Daniel Jeremiah dropped his first mock draft. He had the Packers at 23 selecting edge rusher out of Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart. I had a chance to check out Shamar. Just kind of did a once-through, watched who the heck was I forget which game I watched, but I think it was Oklahoma. I'll just say, without digging too much in, I'm not going to do the scouting report thing right now. Didn't absolutely knock my socks off. The only thing that got me a little bit excited was it reminded me a little bit of Edgerrin Cooper in that I was watching, I was just kind of ho-hum, whatever. And then there was those moments where you got to see some closing speed, and I thought, all right, that seems a little bit different. So definitely didn't have me doing backflips. I'm guessing there's going to be a huge pile of guys that I'm going to like more than Shamar Stewart by the time our pick 23 rolls around. But there you go. Mock draft number 1. That was an interesting little snippet. They said your Packers love a front seven from the SEC with outstanding traits. Stewart fits the mold. And I'm sitting here thinking, who the heck is he talking about? Kenny wasn't in the SEC. Rashan wasn't in the SEC. Lucas Van Ness wasn't in the SEC. And then it dawned on me, our linebackers. He's talking about our linebackers. Like, come on, dude. You picked him, an edge rusher from Texas A&M because our linebackers are from the SEC? Okay, sure. Whatever, bro. Anyways, just starting to see the beginning of this game. Feels like it's over, and it's been about 2 minutes. Anyways, we'll take a break, and we'll start rocking and rolling with our defensive review. All right, well, let's get started looking at the interior defensive line. This is probably going to go a little bit faster. I don't have as many detailed stats on the defense as I do on the offensive side. Kind of more similar to offensive line. So, first of all, Kenny Clark was DT1 with 725 snaps. That was followed by Carl Brooks with 459, then Slayton 457, then Wyatt, who did miss 3 games, but just 366 snaps, then Wooden with 260. So, Kenny is still the dude. By a wide, wide margin. Unfortunately, I'm sure none of you will be shocked to find out, not a ton of top-tier talent for the Green Bay Packers along the defensive line. Our highest-graded defensive lineman was Devonte Wyatt. He ranked 41st among all defensive tackles in the NFL, which honestly is better than I would have expected. There's just not a ton of top-tier talent because he only had a 66 grade. We'll get into the specifics of pass rush run defense. I'm sure you can probably figure out where he excelled and where he did not. But Wyatt was 41st, so a little bit outside of the top 32 there. Then Carl Brooks was 52nd overall. Then Kenny Clark was 61st. Then Colby Wooden 106th. Then TJ Slayton 130th. That's out of 145. So I've made my stance on Slayton pretty clear, and this was kind of a bottoming out session for TJ Slayton that should have solidified it, I would say, for all of us. Looking at run defense specifically, Kenny Clark was the main guy. As sad as it is to say, and the run defense was pretty good for the defense, so I guess it's not that big of a deal, but highest graded run defender on our defensive line, or among our defensive tackles, was Kenny Clark with a 58.4 run defense grade. Then, I kid you not, second was Devonte Wyatt with a 52. And that is not a compliment to Devonte Wyatt. It's a detriment to everybody else that couldn't even surpass Devonte Wyatt's 52 run defense grade. Then you had Colby Wooden, who was 92nd at a 47.7 run defense grade. TJ Slayton, our big, massive nose tackle, with a 44 run defense grade, ranked 110th. And then Carl Brooks was 126th with a 39.7 grade. Apparently Montravius Adams is still in the NFL. He's 143rd. I don't know why he's still in the NFL. And then looking at pass rush, is the only redeeming thing for any of our defensive linemen. Devonte Wyatt, 24th highest graded pass rusher among defensive tackles. He had his 32 pressures out of 250 attempts and 5 sacks. Do wish he'd get a little bit more opportunities there, but again, he was injured and whatnot, and he is pretty much just a pure pass rusher, so I guess I get it. But after that is Kenny Clark, 59th with a 62.7 pass rush grade. Carl Brooks, 71st with a 61. And then Colby Wooden, 73rd with a 60.7 pass rush grade. TJ Slaton, 99th with a 56.6 pass rush grade. Looking at just the raw stats, Kenny Clark had the most pressures on our team, barely beating out, sad as it is to say, barely beating out Devonte Wyatt, despite having almost double the amount of opportunities. Kenny Clark had 34 pressures on 435 attempts. Devonte Wyatt had 32 in just 250 attempts. It's absolutely crazy, but Kenny Clark was our highest, and he was 32nd. Even crazier is that in 435 attempts, Kenny Clark had 1 sack. Devonte Wyatt, 5 in 250. Even Carl Brooks had 4 sacks in his 298 attempts. But looking at Kenny Clark, I mean, just as a kind of a recap of his career, we've talked about it before, but since we're here, 2016 was his rookie year. Didn't really get fully into it until the postseason when it was kind of determined that he's definitely should be up there with Mike Daniels as a top dude. Ended the season with a 75 grade, 69 run defense, 68 pass rush. Not the greatest pass rush, but still, he's a solid football player. Then 2017, he officially broke out, had an 87 grade, 88 run defense, 70 pass rush, 31 pressures and 5 sacks on 344 attempts. Not quite 10%, but still very good, especially run defense. 2018 was his best year, 90 overall, 89 run defense, 89 pass rush, 46 pressures and 6 sacks on 408 attempts. From there, it went straight down, from his 90 overall down to a 80 overall, down to a 76, down to a 75, down to a 66. 2023, he rebounded a little bit to a 70. His pass rush is what kind of maintained throughout this period as his run defense continued to plummet. And then this year, he had an all-time low of a 60 overall grade. His 58 run defense was his third worst. His 62.7 pass rush was by far his worst. Just really bottomed out. If you look at his week to week, it was 30, 40, 40, 60, 70, 40, 50, 60, 30, 50, 60, 70, 80, 80, 60, 60, 50, 60. So starting around week 12, it wasn't terrible. He had no more bad games after that, with the exception, he had a 57 against Chicago, which I guess is a little below average. But, he had 3 really good games in there and about 4 or 5 meh games. The first half of the season was just terrible. But I mean, I can't believe he's only 29 years old. But at 30 years old now, and for a guy that's been declining since 2018, I don't know, man. I know they like the guy. I understand that. But we have got to figure something out that's better than this. I mean, they put way too much on this guy's shoulders, and for what? Number 2 defensive tackle by snaps was Carl Brooks. Again, he had 28 pressures, 4 sacks on 298 attempts, so just below 10%. His season was very up and down with more downs than ups. 40, 60, 60, 60, 30, 90, 60, 60, 30, 60, 70, 60, 50, 40, 50, 60, 50, 80. So he had, his 2 elite games against Arizona and against Philly, even though he didn't play a ton against Philly. 1 game that was a 70, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the 60s, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 50s, 1, 2 in the 40s, and then 2 in the 30s. Just not the greatest. TJ Slaton is just yuck. It was actually very similar, just with a lot lower games. He had an 89 Week 5 against LA, an 83 Week 15 against Seattle, 76 against Chicago. Otherwise, just tons of... he had 3 games above a 70 and just 2 above a 6. So 5 total, 60 or higher. Then you had 58, 57, 55, 53, 49, 48, 47, 42, 37, 37, 35, 35, 34. Wyatt was much better. He had not as many lows. He had a 40 against Minnesota, 49.6. I mean, that's a 50 against Chicago. That's about it, though. He had, 92 against Minnesota week 17, 79, 78, 74, 72. So those were his good games. Had 2 more games in the 60s, and then it was, high 50s for another 4 games, 5 games, and then a 52, a 50, and a 41 were his grades for the season. He had, again, 32 pressures on 250 attempts and 5 sacks, which is pretty impressive. He had most of his games with at least a pressure. He had 1, 2, 3 games only where he had no pressures. And then finally was Colby Wooden. Colby is probably the least impressive in terms of just having nothing good happen for him all season. 50, 50, 50, 60, 60, 40, 50, 40, 50, 40, 40, 60, 60. That was his season. Not a single good game the entire year. He had a 50 overall grade. 8 pressures on 156 attempts is appalling. And just 2 sacks on that. Still better than Kenny somehow, but just 2 sacks. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and do edge rushers. We'll be right back. All right, let's take a look at the edge rushers for the Green Bay Packers. So top dog was Rashan Gary. Played all 18 games, 670 snaps, followed by Kingsley Enigbare, 18 games, 538 snaps. Lucas Van Ness played 18 games, 458 snaps. Preston Smith, we don't need to go over. Brenton Cox, 8 games, 187 snaps. Aaron Mosby, 10 games, 150 snaps, and that is that. Looking at the edge rushers compared to the rest of the NFL, Rashan Gary, despite having a very much a down year, is he going to score another touchdown? Freaking Eagles, dude, I hate this game. Sorry, Rashan Gary did rank 28th. Certainly not what you would hope for, but again, considering this is a huge down year where you expect a big bounce back, I will accept that. 73 overall grade. And then from there, boy, we got to travel quite a bit. Kingsley Enigbare ranked 95th with a 56.8 grade. Lucas Van Ness 111th with a 53.5 grade. They didn't make the cut because they didn't play enough, but for your information, Brenton Cox had a 67.2 grade, and Aaron Mosby had a 62.5. I believe that would have put them 2 and 3, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at run defense, Rashan Gary ranked 21st among all edge rushers with a 73 PFF grade. Kingsley Enigbare was 47th with a 66.6 grade. And then, boy, oh boy, do we have to travel here. Lucas Van Ness, 123rd out of 132 with a 46 run defense grade. Just awful. And then pass rush is probably the worst. Rashan Gary was our highest. He ranked 53rd with a 66.7 grade. Lucas Van Ness, 64th, 64.7 grade. Kingsley Enigbare, 93rd with a 56.8 PFF grade. Looking at Gary week to week, by the way, he had 49 pressures and 9 sacks on 432 attempts. Not a lot of opportunities. They're still really holding him back quite a bit. So if you're worried about the cumulative stats, I can guarantee you he's getting, I don't want to say half as many, but it's pretty close to half as many as some of these other guys. But Rashan got off to a pretty slow start. His first 5 games, he didn't have a single good grade. 50, 40, 60. I guess it's 60, 40, 60, 60, 60 is really what it is. Had his first good game week 6, 80, 70, 60, 60, 80, 60, 60, 60, 60, 90, 60, 70, 50. Again, not what you want for a premier player to have that many 60s, but not a lot of terrible games, and he didn't have, in his first 5 games, he only had pressures in 2 of those games. Since then, starting in week 6, he didn't have a single game without a pressure. In fact, he didn't have a single game without at least 2 pressures. and he had sacks in almost every game starting in week 7. He had 4 games from week 7 on where he didn't have a sack. That was it. I think if there's anything kind of scary about the Rashan thing, and I understand there was an injury in 2022 and everything, but he is following on a very Kenny Clark kind of a path. Year 3 was his big breakout. He had a 90 grade. 2022, it dropped down to an 83, then a 79, and this year a 73. So he's gone the wrong direction now for, the last 3 years. There's an excuse for all of it, right? But I'm not really interested anymore. So if we could just get back to it, that would be great. I feel like it's been nothing but excuses for Rashan. Well, he didn't really get any opportunities, and so that's why it took him so long to kind of get going to year 3 and year 4, which was great. Year 4, he was injured. Year 5, he was recovering from his first year back from injury. Year 6 was a 4-3 switch. Bro, I mean, his career is more than half over. How many more years can we make excuses? As for Kingsley, he's been pretty much the same guy, although he did take a step back this year, 61, 62, and this year a 57 overall. Those are his 3 years since being in Green Bay. Very consistent with his pressures, 25, 27, 26. He did have his most amount of sacks this year, but that's about it. He just not good. His only 2 really good games were mixed into the worst part of his season in the beginning of the year. It was 40-40, 93, 39-84. So some of his worst games were also his best games. Middle of the season was just a bunch of mid, 60, 60, 60, 60, 50, 50, 60, 60. And then again, kind of sandwiching his next 2 best games with his worst games. 71, 49, 37, 43, and then 66. So the beginning and the end were very up and down volatile. The middle was just straight across the board, boring garbage. He did do a pretty good job generating at least a pressure every game. Sacks really were not there. Only had sacks in, 3 different games, despite the 5 sacks, because he had 2 in 2 different games. So the Kingsley thing is not really working. As for Lucas Van Ness, he took a step backward. His rookie year, he had a 62 grade. This year, a 53. His run defense went from a 61 to a 46. His pass rush did improve, although the stats did not. The stats got worse across the board, despite a few more opportunities. It was just average across the board with some bad games mixed in. 60, 40, 60, 50, 60, 30, 30, 60, 50, 30. 83 is one good game against San Francisco. And then back to 60, 60, 60, 60, 50, 60, 50. I mean, you can't have one good game a year, man. You can't do that. Brenton Cox just played in, 8 games or so? Certainly wasn't great, but in comparison to everybody else, I guess you take it. His first game was about a 60. We'll call it a 60 for the sake of being generous here against Chicago, Week 11. Then it was 80, 60, 50, 70, 80, 50, 40. Of course, his terrible game came in the playoffs against Philly. And finally, Aaron Mosby, pretty similar, borderline better, just based on how few games he played and how many good games in those few there were. 60, and then, almost a 70. 60, 60, 70, 70, 70, 3 good games in a row. But then 63, 41, 45. His last 2 games against Minnesota and Chicago, he completely fell off, and then we didn't even get to see him. With that said, he was a pretty big jump. I mean, he played... it's not even a jump. He really hasn't played ever. He played 2 snaps for Carolina in 2022, didn't play in 2023, and then 2024 comes in and was our 3rd best pass rusher. Just terrible. But anyways, I'm going to leave you guys with that. We will pick this up tomorrow. We'll get our linebackers, corners, and safeties, and then we'll call it. Have a good one. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.